Dr. Ahluwalia, what would you do in terms of making these spending decisions? Because, that's the thing about this COVID-19 recession. It's probably the strangest recession in living memory, where some people have been left unscathed and some people have been completely decimated. And that's happened in the context of a universe or a world which, at any rate, was perhaps the most unequal in living history. If you had to go out and prioritize spending, saying, here's where I do want to put my money into, what would your top two or three points over there look like?
Well, clearly, the requirements of the poorest segments of the population. Yeah, the requirements of the poorest segments of the population should obviously have first priority. From that point of view, I think we could have been more generous, perhaps, than we were in announcing for the year as a whole that the sort of support that we were going to give to the poor was not just for 3 months, but that it would continue as long as the growth rate didn't recover or some such thing. So people would have been able to plan a little bit more. One critical area where clearly more expenditure is possible is in the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program. Because all the information that one gets from the newspapers is that states, there's more demand for this program, and they're not able to actually employ people because money hasn't been released, although it is meant to be a demand-driven program. So quite honestly, a large increase in expenditure so that no state is able to say that you didn't make money available. In fact, release the money, because very often the state won't spend unless the money is released. So that's a clear area. Now, the third area, which I think the pandemic is driving us to, is that the central government should simply say that we're going to cover the entire cost of vaccination of the public sector program. I mean, this is a public good. I don't know what they're going to do. It hasn't actually been stated yet. It has been stated that for the first 300 million, it's going to be free. But I would say that it should be free through the public sector, and most of the money needed would be in the next year. So that would be a clear additional expenditure going into the health area. I agree with what Sajid said, that infrastructure is probably the one area where the government ought to be doing much more if you want to have a healthy private investment-led recovery. Because sooner or later, private investors will start getting into the act. That's not when the government should be getting into the act competitively, producing the same things, but it should be in the act producing the infrastructure that's needed to stimulate that kind of investment. Now, how much can you do? Infrastructure projects take a very long time to plan. But I wonder in how many cases bills have been held back. When the message goes out that you should economize, I mean, any halfway sensible civil servant will raise a few objections to the bills that have been put in. The problem is that when you raise these objections, it's very difficult to counter them. At least the same person isn't going to counter them. So you need to give some thought to how much more money you can push out, because what this will do is it will ease the financial condition of the contractors in the business. Because otherwise what's happening is they're not paying their bills further downstream. So I think that if we were quite clear that we're willing to see a big increase in the deficit this year, and I think we're all agreed that would be a good thing. If the finance minister also agreed that that's going to be a good thing, there's a lot that can be done for expenditure in the current year. And I think for next year, I kind of agree with what Sajid said, that, we shouldn't assume that we'll be back to normal next year. Because at the moment, the projections being made by the CSO, are that we will have a big increase in government consumption expenditure the rest of this year, and that will bring the economy back to the 2019, 2020 level for the second half. But, going forward, I mean, I'm not sure that you want a comparable huge increase in government consumption. There has to be some increase in the other elements, particularly investment. And there, what you do to the banking system, to my mind, is very crucial. So if you're looking for signals which the finance minister could give, I think the signal on how we're going to handle the banking problem, which is just goes on and on and on with no real resolution, I would look for a solid guidance on how the government intends to handle that part of the problem. So those are, and I go back to what I said earlier. I mean, Sajid was mentioning about revenue response. I really think this is the time to make an effort to bring the GST back on track. I mean, I mean, they often say that, you use a crisis, you treat a crisis like an opportunity. Well, I mean, GST reform, filling it out, fixing the problems, simplifying the rates, I mean, it's staring at us. And I think we have a situation where politically, you need a positive vote in the GST Council, but the government plus all the states which are actually ruled by the BJP, if they would all agree, I think you would get that vote. And I think that would be a very big thing, not just for next year. It would be a very big thing for the next 4 or 5 years, because we need a multi-year program to take care of this problem of bringing the fiscal side back on track.